So the photo today was all the president's men, but the work is painting. Too much, I drink too much, I want too much. Everything in moderation, including moderation. That's a David Simonism. Oh yeah, he has a son. Sipping whiskey by the fire. It's hard. Too much, too much, I want too much. Vanilla. I know, it's not that cold outside, but man, it gets cold in this house. It's nice in the summertime, because it keeps the house cool. song. Aw. Cool. Kissing whiskey by the fire. Goes. To change the world. Goes. When I do the Ava in residence, I'll be bringing my paintings. And then wherever I'm hosted, obviously it doesn't need to be very fancy. It's better if it's not. So I don't have to worry about the floor. But I can bring stuff for the floor if we're somewhere. Is this besides the day you left me? I started this project with the panels and everything to be an exploration of sacred art. Because I just was never compelled to kind of get in the fray of the art world. It always seemed a little bit perplexing to me, I guess. And the whole idea of like churn and burn. And I was also just so moved by early Renaissance pictures. You know, this sort of flattened religious iconography. I was just like interested in exploring that. And that, I mean, just amazing how, like, you know, in a creative mind, when you actually have time to explore, you know, this became, maybe you've seen this became like the meditation on complex business problems. You know, this is a scroll, which is, again, it's a spiritual, religious art history form, a scroll, you know. This one loops in a Mobius strip, and it's really tough to deal with. This is a big, huge piece of paper, and it's so I work on it in all these different ways. Sometimes I use it, if I have the space, I'll lay it out flat. Other times, you know, I'll be working at it with the mask on that limits my vision. That's what this is for, my superhero mask. And by, you know, wearing this, I was able to look at much smaller portions of this huge thing. So the whole idea of big data being a problem in business, I was reflecting on that. And obviously I've been reflecting a lot. This is a lot of doodling. So this is mindful making, which is one kind of spiritual practice. Again, I don't think you need to do everything on a spiritual path, nor should you. But you pick like the practices that are most relevant to you, whether that's a physical practice like yoga, or you know, scripture reading, or mindful making, mindful walking. It's all about sort of mindfulness, really. And I'm going to use the word blessed, that I really pursued that, because all of these pods, all of this economic development stuff came as a consequence of conscious making. This is my meditation. I've got panel after panel, you know, and dealing with these panels is easy. I've uploaded some of these videos. I don't know if you've seen them, but when I work on these panels, I'm spinning them. Spinning them like this. Sometimes I'm spinning them, whipping them around. And these actually, I started thinking about mandalas, and obviously I'm not gonna, it's not like a sand thing that I'm gonna blow away, but to just surrender. And these, which look like they all have imagery now, started off as this. This I was actually putting on the wheel and spinning so that I could make smaller sort of florals. And then the exercise with that was to connect those and be respectful. And I invited people, kids, at the beach, whatever, to also sort of like this part of the drawing right here is a child do this. And I thought, oh, that kind of looks like a bird. So this is like the neighborhood style guide, the local flavor stuff. The challenge here was, you know, big systems, big grid systems that we have with politics and insurance and healthcare and all these huge systems. They're hard to connect. So my meditation was, how do you respect the integrity of somebody else's expression, but weave it into a larger scheme of things? So that's where the whole idea of like, well, there are certain consistent things that I do from moment to moment, which in many ways mimics spiritual practice. So if you're in a practice, you know, you're practicing piano, or you've got to jazz, you've got to learn your scales. If you're a painter, you've got to learn your color theory. If you're, you know, there's all this stuff that when you're sort of mindful and you're practicing, these things come up. So, and they're consistent, and you have to, you know, there's no, like, I'm going to exercise, you know, do all of my exercise once a year. It doesn't work that way, right? You have to exercise regularly, a couple times a week, so that you can have benefits. And so yeah, this is the meditation where it's just like, what we need is a consistent lens that is a framework that applies kind of the same way that cell phones or mobile devices have transformed everything. And then prior to that, the personal computer transformed everything. And yet our government systems, so many of our systems haven't kept up the pace of that. So yeah, so that's where the idea came from. It was just, what we need is a real simple framework that we can all use that applies to everybody. So it's a very tech idea, actually, applied to a very, very low-tech environment, which has been my spirit's calling. I couldn't, I was looking forward to midlife so that I could actually work on this stuff, because this stuff takes so much time. I mean, I work all the time, but it doesn't feel like work because this is my calling and my passion, But anyway, these are my reflections, and so what I learned was, or what I relearned. I mean, everybody knows that, right? You've got to practice in order to stay fluid as a musician. You've got to practice in order to stay limber as a yogi. You have to practice whatever your practice is. You have to practice your practice in order to become a master. And the whole idea of having mindful making was an idea that's been sitting with me for the longest time, because it was like, do you want to make it as an artist? No. It was never something that was like, oh, I want to be, when I was a kid, I would say I want to be a famous artist, but what I meant was I want to be a master artist. I want to master it, and in order to master it, I would need time to do that. And, a lot of our reproductive age folks lack that very thing. And that's, one of the things that when I was talking about the age groups with our platform, we put so much on reproductive age folks, who have kids and they've got to do soccer practice and they've got to do, scout leading, and there's just, you've got to run kids back and forth, and you've got to do the errands and da-da-da-da. I mean, and then we underutilize midlifers and we underutilize seniors in terms of sort of in community engagement. And that's a shame, right? That's a shame. So the whole idea of maker pads and R&B, room and board, so that we don't just leave these towns. And I went through a near foreclosure process on this house as well. And, because I was recovering from, being on the wrong mental health medications. I mean, that's just insanity. Having people on mental health medications without a patient advocate, I was running around with like masks on and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I was not okay. I was on the wrong meds. So yeah, I was recovering from that, and I went through that, near foreclosure process, and I had to deal with the bank and the paperwork during all that sort of mental health medication nightmare stuff. So anyway, I took all of that stuff, all of that like yucky stuff that was happening in my life, and really transformed it into these pods and into this platform, really thinking about, gosh, if I had had time, I wouldn't have had to wait until I was in my mid-40s to really get serious about making art. And that's a shame, right? That's a shame. We want to get people, especially because in this technologically connected age, we're one click away from somebody who will do it better and cheaper than us. So all the TED Talks about the Sir Robinson, the TED Talk on creativity and education, we don't need a nation full of generalists. We need people to have that long tail. That's a search engine term. So I am, and have always been, a designer, a painter, and a seeker. And that's what I'm going to stay, even as I roll for president. That's a Chris Rock line, which I think is really funny. As I run for president, as I dance, as I shimmy and shake for president, as we, right? Because we're going to all do it together. It's going to be so much fun. But yeah, the thought was, oh my gosh, you know, we've got these towns that need TLC. We've got a bunch of vacant buildings after all these, you know, the 2008, 2009, you know, and I was like, there's got to be a better way to simplify this process, but it isn't. It's very complex for, you know, foreclosed homes and foreclosed properties. And I realize everything has been improving dramatically since then. Obviously, it's not the same situation as it was then, thank goodness. But that was the seed of the thinking was, you know, if we had programs in place where if someone was, you know, having trouble making ends meet or something, you know, if we had these maker pods, then the community could kind of gather around a property and either engage with the owner to help them, you know, get it into a safe place, or rearrange it somehow so that, you know, we don't just have sort of assets that are just sitting there, not being taken advantage of. That just seems very wasteful to me. So the pods, you know, if we have this programming in place and we can really work it out during the campaign trail redesign, then it should be easier. It should be a possibility that we could say, hey, you know, we've got a plan, instead of just having buildings sit there. And heaven forbid, I mean, you see in the cities, I've rolled from town to town, and in you know, many cities, you know, you see homeless folks sleeping outside of vacant buildings. I mean, that's just like, wait, surely we can come up with something. Like, you know, you look at Skid Row in Los Angeles, and you're like, what is happening here? Like, why can't this get better? And so one of the things is a systems thing. And I spoke with a friend who, he's at Bank of America, formerly at Fannie Mae, and he explained to me that, you know, banks have fiduciary commitments to, you know, they can't just hand it off, even though so much of this stuff, you know, these assets, and it's not just real estate. I mean, there are assets that just sit on people's, you know, spreadsheets, and they're not being reinvested. And the whole income and inequality thing, the 1% conversation, blah, blah, blah. We've got to, you know, the pods are the way to get assets that are just sitting there, sitting on their assets, moving, you know, into the community, investing and getting, you know, the stuff unblocked. So at any rate, thank goodness that, you know, I was able to, despite it was a very horrible time being on the wrong meds, and I can't, and that's why I'm so like healthcare, hospitality, school nurse, doc in the box, local, you know, we need to have somebody local who can start helping us machete through the complexity that is healthcare. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I had the experience of you know, going into the free clinic and getting, you know, a different doctor every time I went, and getting different meds. At one point, they had prescribed me 6 different pharmaceutical medications, and I'm like, how am I going to know which one is working or not working if I'm taking that many all at once? You know, so lacking a patient advocate, when you've got people on mental health medications is the definition of insanity. I'm sorry, but that's just not okay. So anyway, back to the whole, the spiritual thing. I mean, thank goodness that I was able to really embrace that desire of mine in discovery and exploration. And that is yet another thing that we're missing in our country when we don't have, you know, maker pads, R&Bs, when it's so hard for students who are coming out of school to find jobs, and the cost of living is so high, and they're getting saddled with student loan debt. Exactly where is this innovation supposed to be coming from? Everybody talks about it quite a bit, but we gotta like do it. So yeah, thank goodness that I, you know, I was like, you know what I want to do? I want to embrace sacred art making And if I were to have that conversation with somebody who was a business person, you know, and their mindset was about business plans and ROI, return on investment, and if they were thinking only in terms of dollars and cents, they would be like, yeah, spiritual art making sounds like a good plan, you know? And yet, you know, from my own spiritual walk and seeking and so forth, it was that I was there, present in my practice of conscious making, maker pad making, that the fruit turned into economic development. It wasn't the art making, you've got to be a superstar, you've got to make money, you've got to sell your art. It's like, it's just never seemed like the thing to me. Right. So embracing that, you know, and embracing that idea of discovery, thank goodness I didn't get into this trap of, you got to move it and shake it, you know, I got to make giclée prints of it, and I've got to make t-shirts, you know, I mean, all the crazy stuff that artists have to do to earn a living. And yet, these, you know, are some of our most creative thinkers, and being long tail folks, you're going to find that most people who have, you know, the desire to tinker in the garage, where business after business after business, that is a story of American innovation, starting in a garage. You know, whether they're tinkering with some engineering thing, that's our you know, Microsoft, Apple stories, or a garage band. You know, I mean, stuff happens when people have spaces to work, and the cost of living isn't so high, you know, and so, you know, room and board became an idea, and MakerPad became an idea. You know, how do we transform some of these things into places where people can go, and if you go and you innovate, then you can stay there for free. What is the point of having empty buildings? What is the point of that? When we could rebuild entire communities by populating them with, if we've got a framework for doing that, and that's what I'm working on with the AVA platform, the AVA 2016 platform. So anyway, I just wanted to share, that was sort of like, that's where ideas come from, and you never know where they're going to come from, and you never know from whom they're going to come. You know, you don't know. You know, you have your garage band guy who does, you know, search engine optimization, or you've got a painter who does, you know, septic tank design. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, nobody is just one thing. And that's what gives us our long tail. That's what makes us unique individuals. That's what makes us ultimately highly marketable, because you're going to be doing a mashup. That's what creativity is, right? Creativity, nothing exists in a vacuum, right? Every thought that you have was probably influenced by something, whether it was media or a book you read or some post you saw. But then you're going to take that thing and you're going to bring it into your environment, and you're going to be mashing it up with the stuff that interests you. That's why the Inside Out community development, that's why Know Thyself, that's where the whole like sanctuary hashtag thing comes from. Pinups Presidential is going to be the, you know, the sassy, fun, entertaining, you know, way to talk about some stuff that, you know, a lot of times gets pretty, you know, divisive. So we want to create that entertainment format so that we can have fun with it and play with ideas and turn them upside down and have a laugh at ourselves and say, you know, wow, you know, we take things way too seriously, we're not getting stuff done. That's what Pinups Presidential, the tour, is about. But the Sanctuary Pod is kind of about this stuff. It's about mindfulness. It's about you know, that mashup, that unique long tail thing that is you. There's no one like you, and we need you. And you need me, right? You need me to be this. You don't need me as a presidential candidate to pretend that I know about infrastructure. I don't know a thing about infrastructure, but I know how to reach out to people who know about infrastructure. And we know with technology that as people devote themselves to great content, that they rise, they trend into thought leadership. And that's what we want. What we want is, we want a kitchen cabinet, whatever we want to call it. I'm kind of fond of that idea, of the best people, the best thinkers in the world, and their long tails. I know, a costume idea is coming up here. Yeah, so that we can stop sort of doing gotcha journalism and really start investigating stuff, and stop relying upon, sound bites, and start like digging in and solving some problems and figuring out what works and what doesn't. And there's no way around working. But when we have people who are, identified and they're educated and they have an opportunity to get started somewhere without this sort of, okay, you've got, this complexity in all of our basic systems and fees, and it's a mess. I mean, it's just very, very difficult. And that's my point for doing the AVA in residence. That's my point for doing this sort of stage dive. It's like, when I went recently to, I'm not going to name names, but I went to a nonprofit to talk about, doing an AVA in residence thing. And, here I am, years of experience, midlifer, a zillion things that they could put me to work doing. And I said, what are you working on? Let me help you. Here are my skills. Here's my LinkedIn profile. Here's my Facebook. Here's all my stuff. Tell me what you're working on. I'm going to come do life with you for a month and help you serve this community. And they couldn't take advantage of it. And the teachers showed up 45 minutes late, and there was nobody to sort of walk me out, and and it's not their fault. It's just the people who are in the neighborhoods who know what needs to get done are so overburdened that they don't have staff. And this is a real people-intensive thing. I mean, in the process of streamlining everything, and a lot of people were like, oh, the little local business is gone by the wayside, and that's why we don't have our little American, our little Main Street towns anymore. And there's an element of that. We wouldn't want to stop technology. I mean, to the point that we've got goods that we can get produced at the very lowest possible price is good for everybody, right? And the more that those things are sort of consolidated, the more that we can impact how they're produced environmentally and so forth. So I mean, that's a good thing, and that you can't ever stop technology. But what we do have to do is adapt. So that ended up becoming, well, nobody's going to go to the little local Main Street store who can't compete with like Amazon's pricing. But Amazon's not the bad guy. Technology's not the bad guy. That's not the point. The point is that now that we've got that sort of streamlined and moving forward the way it ought to, it's sort of separating out our commercial systems from our sacred systems and saying, okay, now what do we want to do with those little Main Street towns? And how can we rethink not just the Main Street, but the neighborhoods around them? And I went from town to town to neighborhood block after neighborhood block, where I was just like, you know what? If we had these pods, and if people could gather into affinity groups and write a business plan for like 25 years, something like that, so that we could say, hey, we want to use quality materials. We want to turn this property and this property and this property into an R&B or into a maker pad so that we can invite people in to help. But that's where the hospitality idea comes in, neighborhood concierge and neighborhood hospitality, because unless you're prepared, like that nonprofit where I went, unless you're prepared to receive distinguished guests, then they're not going to be in a place that they can help you or help us. So the whole moving Ava from town to town, food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, sanitation, that shouldn't be difficult, but it is. It's remarkably difficult. And it's because people just aren't thinking that way. And we need to. We need to say, hey, we've got these gems of these little beautiful American, it's heart and soul. I mean, it is American soul, these places. And what can we do with these places? Can we drop pins on it? Can we make them destination education and then write a new business plan where we, combine the real estate with education opportunities? And then we can get grants if we connect all of those dots. Or sponsors, in the case of the destination music, you've got media sponsors, you've got people who manufacture instruments. In the case of destination engineering, you've got people that build trains. It's time for us to take a look at all of the beautiful things that we have and rethink it. What's the point of continuing to build, corporate campuses when basically corporate campuses are small towns? I'm like, why don't we just ask the people in this neighborhood if they would be interested in hosting a big corporation's quality assurance department? Hey, we will house and get, all the Wi-Fi, all the tech that they are going to need so that we can turn this beautiful little forgotten train town into a place where a major corporation could house and host an entire department. Because what is a corporate campus but a small town? Why don't we do that? Why don't we do some of this stuff? So that's where our Pinups Presidential, our sanctuary pod, what is this business? What does this look like now? This business of being human beings together on a globally connected planet. And we're using brand USA because that is, my background is doing small business brand marketing. So as I was, I'll leave it there. For once, I'll actually leave something. This is my flow time. This is what I do. This is what I do. So anyway, when I come to town, I will be doing this. Wherever you guys want to set me up. And we pass the baton between the Avas who are coming to town to help. And it's about you. It's about your neighborhood, your affinity group, your community, what are you working on? And I paint, I can help work on buildings, I can help work on design, I can help, any of the pods that we're working on, I can do what I can do. And we'll invite other experts in to help, with whatever it is that you're working on. So we've got the food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, sanitation, and we've got the preamble, we've got the 4 age groups. That's the framework for everybody. Those are the things we share versus, arguing about the things that we don't. But then the themes change from place to place, and some of the common themes are infrastructure, education, but they're not. The themes are not the same in every neighborhood. So that's why you've got a little bit more of a mix and match with the themes, and that's why I kind of set it up that way. So I love what we're doing. I love the support that we're getting, and I just wanted to share. So back in my own studio space. Coming soon to a town near you. Peace.